The Dead Pair Podcast is brought to you by the Elite Experience, Elite Shotguns, and is fueled by Fiocchi.
Paul?
Welcome to the Dead Pair Podcast, coming in hot with everything you want to hear about sporting clays.
Guy Fieri.
How are you, gentlemen? Thanks for having me.
Anthony Matarese Jr., how you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty well.
Welcome back, David Radulovich.
That's a net positive. Brad Kidd.
Corey Cruz. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Now I feel awkward.
With your hosts, Jason Rambo
No more Red Bull for you.
and Sean Alley.
Woo, yeah!
Christmas.
Let's do it.
Often imitated but never duplicated. It's the Dead Pair Podcast. And now, it's showtime.
What's up, Mr. Large and in charge?
Well, we're back in here and somebody forgot to lock the door again.
I know. Welcome, Joey Hill. And I want to say EZGO, but it's actually Textron is the mother company.
It is Textron, but everyone knows this is EZGO. Yes.
Awesome. Well, this is an exciting episode. We're looking forward to diving into this. First of all, our guest today is brought by Bear Pelt. At Bear Pelt, it's not just your vest, it's your new uniform. Joey, you've kind of got an interesting story. I mean, you were introduced to us through Mr. Ricky Marshall Jr. himself, but kind of give everybody a little bit of background. It's like, yeah, we know EZGO golf carts, but how did you get involved in shooting?
It's kind of a complicated story. So I've actually been with EZGO for now a little over 16 years. So back up, believe it or not, I was a professional golfer. Played college golf at OU, got injured, needed something to do to be competitive, I guess, since golf was kind of put on the shelf for a little while. Went to a gun club, loved it, started shooting, became a trap shooter. Then Rick and I, became friends actually probably since 2005. Really? Then with EZGO, I started sponsoring more and more sporting clay events. I think the first one I went to was Grinnell Cup.
Okay.
So, yeah, in Nashville, started shooting. Rick and I shot together, Josh Taylor from White Fly. We had kind of a group, and then it just kind of progressed from there. So we started doing both. I mean,
Nice.
Depending on how our schedules worked, yeah, we shot the Nationals quite a bit, and yeah.
So what is your official title then with EZGO or Textron?
So I'm a regional sales manager.
Okay.
So I handle, Ohio, Michigan. Like I said, I've been around a while. So I've been, most of the states. Most of the dealers know me. But yeah, I handle the vehicle side of our business.
Okay.
So,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Well, Joey, here's the thing. I mean, me and Jason have gone to lots of shoots since we started back in 2017. You can't hardly go anywhere without seeing a mass of both golf carts and side-by-side. So they're very, very popular. Obviously, some of the terrain, some of the sizes of the place that we go to makes it a lot better for people to travel around, especially if you have any injuries. I got a bad wheel on my right ankle, and, so I ride either with Jason and one of my other buddies to get me around, especially on the hilly areas and the big places that you got to walk around like for half a mile to get somewhere to the other. But have you guys seen like an increase, a surge of purchases in golf carts and side-by-sides? Because you guys also handle, if I'm not mistaken, Arctic Cat is another brand that you guys handle?
Correct. Yeah, we bought Arctic Cat in 2017.
Okay,
So, yeah,
gotcha.
that's kind of, it fell under me for about a year and a half. I had those dealers, and then we kind of just divided back the way it was, where I handle basically our consumer side on EZGO, then they have their own reps on the Arctic Cat side.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Gotcha.
But you're well familiar then. Obviously, there's kind of the golf cart clan, and then there's the side-by-side clan. Yep. So we're going to dive into some of the questions tonight, talking about like the pros and cons of each, why you would want one over the other, and vice versa. So, Jason, I'll let you go ahead and get started.
I think it was, I don't remember the year, but it was in the early to mid 90s when Sean and I were introduced to sporting clays, and my dad's best friend had a bad hip. So he was one of the first people that we ever saw on the course with a golf cart. Of course, most of the courses were, I don't know where it was all over the country, but I know here in Ohio, most of the courses were walkable. Okay?
Yeah, they're pretty tight.
Yeah. And so then, here we come with a golf cart, and they're like, well, you guys lazy or something? What? Now it's like, what? You don't have a buggy or a golf cart? So what do you think it was, if you had to put a finger on it? Is it the size of the courses? Is people just getting lazy? Was it more cost effective? What do you think it was that lured everybody into having either a golf cart or side-by-side?
I think it was a little bit of everything. I think, honestly, the biggest thing I saw was they started taking more and more equipment. Mm-hmm. I mean, I hate to say it. I mean, you go out and shoot, you've got 100 birds, and you're taking a flat of shells with you, right? You're not just taking 100, right? And you got choke tubes, you got vests, you've got rain gear. It's one of those things. So I think that played a big factor where it didn't really make sense. It's kind of like why, people walk on a golf course. Sure, it's good exercise, but then after a while, you've got a lot of equipment. It becomes taxing. Let's put it that way. Sure. So, and then once somebody has one, it kind of goes from there.
Right? It's almost like a prestige thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So it just kind of progressed from there. And you don't want to be the guy in the squad that doesn't have one, and they're always waiting on you. And most people are good. You can hop on. But let's say, there isn't room for you, right? Now you're walking, and you're the only one, and they're waiting on you.
Well, and then, you got guys like, I'm not going to mention any names like Sean Alley, that, all of his buddies have golf carts and side-by-sides. They don't need to buy one. They just hop a ride with them.
That's right. I owned a boat for years, so I know the whole philosophy. It's better to know somebody with a boat than it is to own your own boat. So it's the same thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so seriously, they're really nice pieces of equipment. Let's talk a little bit. Let's just start into it right now. So if you're a guy, maybe you live out in the rural area, you got a farm, you got a couple acres of land, it probably makes more sense to have a side-by-side, right? Because it's more utilitarian?
I would think so. It's one of those things, people like I see that have the side-by-sides, you name it, the Polaris Crew, Ranger, whatever it is. Those guys are using it at home. It's not only, most of the time, I wouldn't say it's their Sporting Clay's vehicle, right? They didn't specifically buy it for that. It has dual purpose. With an EZGO, I think it's that guy, and we've talked about it's the same thing. They're using it at home. They don't need a side-by-side per se. Yeah.
Some of the different models. Let's go through that real quick, Sean, if you don't mind.
Go for
Joey. So obviously you have Arctic Cat and EZGO, and now you guys also, don't you offer also the UTV that's for sale at like Cabela's or whatever? What brand is that?
Oh, that's Tracker.
Tracker.
Yeah. So that is made by Arctic Cat with the Tracker name on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's the same vehicles, just with a different sticker on
it.
Gotcha.
Different name. We make it for them. Yes.
So go through some of the models, because I know EZGO has a Sporting Clay specific model.
We do. We call it the Clay's car. Yes.
Yeah. So, what do you think, if you had to go through each one of the three, which do you think would be most appropriate for Sporting Clays?
I think the S4, which is our Clay's car, the Express S4. It's 4-passenger, flip down back seat, so you can carry 2 guys, 4 guys. You have it has an ammo basket up front, flip windshield. You could have your scabbards on the side. It's lifted, chrome wheels, taillights, brake. It's not like a vehicle on the golf course. It's
a little more rugged.
Yeah, it just looks cooler. Let's put it that way.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so
we're all about cool.
Exactly.
Yeah. Why do you think Sean and I have high-end guns? It's not because we need them.
Yeah.
Okay, so before you go on any further, what's the MSRP on that model?
Depending on what options you have, you're in that $13,000-$14,000 range.
Okay.
That's decked out. It's fuel injected Kawasaki under the hood, 13.5. You got plenty of power. So yeah.
Now, go ahead.
Well, I was going to just jump in here real quick. So speaking of it, since you made a point, and this is just one thing that jumps in my head. So would you say most of the golf carts, if you're going to use them for Sporting Clays, would have to be gas versus electric, obviously? Because I know you make both, right?
Yeah, so I would definitely own Sporting Clays 100%. I would say gas just because of the length, of the facility. If you have a facility, we're near the Cardinal Center, right? I don't think there's any... you could use electric there. I don't think there's any way you
because it's pretty flat.
It is pretty flat, not really long. You go to Nationals, you go to Grinnell Cup, right? You go to Nashville Gun Club. That's a ways around. Plus, the other thing is charging them.
Where are you going to plug it in at night?
Yeah, exactly. And you're leaving it there. You got to run extension cords. That's the only negative.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Gas is just easier. Let's just put it that way. But yeah, we make lithium. It does last longer. It's quicker, charging time. But essentially, it comes down to, do you have the ability to charge? If you're in an RV, yeah, no problem. Hook it up, plug it right into a 110, you're good to go. Yeah. And there's people who do that. On trap, I go to the Grand American, most years, and it's all asphalt, right? You're not going far. You could go the whole week on one charge, right? Because you're not going hundreds of miles here,
Right.
You may go 25 miles, which... something like that you could do that on a charge on an electric vehicle now. So
yeah, exactly. Okay, so moving on to let's go to the Tracker next. Mm-hmm. So what's the MSRP on that, and do you think that that's a viable option?
It's a viable if that's something you guys are going after. The Prowler Pro is kind of their vehicle. I'll be honest, I don't know what the Tracker name of that vehicle is, just because I'm not on that side. But like the Prowler Pro is their best-selling vehicle, and they make it in a crew model. I think that vehicle MSRP starts at like 17 for like the 4-pass. You go all the way up to, to the crew version, you're 25-ish. I mean, depending on how you deck it out. Now, it's not specifically designed for sporting clays. I mean, you're going to have to add stuff to that vehicle. Yeah.
And then the Arcticat.
That would be the Prowler Pro. Yeah.
Okay.
I just didn't know what Bass Pro kind of Cabela's calls the tracker version of that Prowler Pro.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Well, I mean, don't throw any daggers at me, but, I have a John Deere they call it their, oh my gosh, it's a UTV, but they call it their...
It's like a sport utility, right? It's not true utility, and it's not the sport model.
They've got the work utility, and then they got the get it, go fast model, and this is the in-between. It's a hybrid is what I'm talking about.
Yep.
So it still goes plenty fast enough, way faster than I care to anymore. Yeah. But like Sean said, it rides so daggone nice. But the main reason for me getting that was the power dump bed. I split anywhere from 4 to 5 cords of firewood a year, and I use that thing at home. And everybody laughs, but it works really great. Like my gun rack in the back sits up on the side rails, and it goes up and over and from side to side. Well, I don't have to take the gun rack in and out to use it for firewood.
Right.
But you have options like that with Arcticat, right? I mean, if somebody wanted to go with something like that. But see, that made sense for me. I've already got this buggy, right? So I could use it, and it's quiet too. Yeah. That's the other thing I like about it. Talk about that a little bit. That seems to be an ongoing complaint with shooters everywhere.
Yeah.
Is how noisy these things are. Guys leave them running so the air conditioner or heater's on or whatever, and you can hear the cooling fan kicking on. Is that something you guys look at as far as from a decibel standpoint on exhaust from the factory?
I mean, we do more. So we have, to go backwards, we have 2 motors on the EZGO side, right? So we have a quieter, less powerful, smaller motor that we use on some of our other vehicles, right? More for golf, and then we also have the Kawasaki motor, right? We have the EX1, which is our smaller. It's 11.5 horse. You have a 13.5 horse Kawasaki. So you have kind of 2 different options, right?
Okay.
But comparing it to a side-by-side, even the Kawasaki is not loud. It's just not. And that's one of the advantages we have. You don't need to leave that running, right? Get in, you leave the key on, you step on the pedal, you're ready to go, right? It's not firing it up just like your car, and you're taking off. I mean, you can cruise right up behind somebody. And a lot of times it's, they've got earmuffs on. I mean, they can't really hear you. You pull up in a big diesel, whatever, they hear you coming.
Right.
I mean, and it depends, right? I mean, it's just one of those things. So.
Yeah, and we've seen the same thing. Our buddy JD, he traded up. He had a Honda, and he started off with, I think it was a 750 or an 800, which was really super loud. And then he upgraded to 1000. It was a lot quieter. So he's really happy about that. But, let's talk a little bit about, you don't really need super power, obviously, to go sporting clay shooting. But let's talk about comfort a little bit. There's lots of options these days. Like you can get a heated and air-conditioned cab, right? You guys offer that in your models?
Yep. Well, we do on the Arcticat side. On the EZGO side, we don't. That's the thing. That's what you're kind of giving up. Also, the independent suspension, when you're looking at the Clay's car, right? It's not that cushy ride.
Right.
But you're talking different price points. Yeah. You're also talking about speed, right? We really haven't brought that up where, our vehicles stop around that 20 mile an hour mark, right? Because we have to, right? It doesn't have a ROPS, doesn't have a roller protection system like a Gator, an Arcticat. Those type of vehicles can go 25, 30, 50 miles an hour, where an EZGO's not. We're stopping at 20 just because that's where we are. Let's put it that way. That's kind of our niche. So,
gotcha.
But yeah, you can get air conditioning in it. It's not going to be the air conditioning you're talking about, right? It's an aftermarket system. It's not something that we have at EZGO because it's, for us, sporting clays is a big market for some brands. For us, it's not as big a market, right?
Okay.
So I don't think they've developed those types of things. We have hard cabs and things like that, but it's not the same level on the Arcticat side. Let's put it that way.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, all right. So let's talk a little bit now about, since our listeners are out there and maybe some of them are on the fence about, do I get a golf cart or do I get a side-by-side? Regardless of the brand, obviously. No, we want to see you do well with the EZGO. But, let's talk about the reasonings why. So let's take guy A. He lives in town, in a neighborhood, suburban guy. And then we got guy B. Maybe he lives not on a farm, but he lives rural. He lives out. So obviously, to me, it makes sense. The guy that lives in town, what does he need a side-by-side for? What is he ever going to use it for, right?
Correct.
So maybe a golf cart's his best choice. Might be able to run around the neighborhood. Maybe there's the local golf courses a couple streets over. He could maybe run over there without getting busted by the cops or something. I don't know. I know around here there's a few communities that actually the people do run around in golf carts, and nobody says anything to them.
And that's a good point. I mean, we live in Ohio. They have an ordinance, right? So unless your city overdoes that ordinance, you can have a golf cart can be street legal in your town, right? I mean, there's got to be turn signals and all that stuff.
Right.
And it's pretty common, right?
Yeah.
I mean, where I live, we see them all the time. I mean, any road under 35 miles an hour, they can have them. Side-by-side's not in the same ballpark, right? Now, you could be in your town, but it's not everywhere. That's one of the big things.
Well, the wife and I are looking at houses in Florida right now, and it's unbelievable the amount of communities. They drive home in their car, and then they don't touch their car the rest of the time. Everything's golf cart.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The whole entire community is golf cart. Like, you go to the grocery store that's out front, it's all golf carts.
Yep.
I mean, it's like, wow. I mean, so that had to have been big for you guys, too. You had to see an uptick, like, as the popularity of that kind of thing grew, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you speak of Florida. I mean, look at the villages, right?
Oh my goodness!
There's 85,000 golf cars in that community, and it keeps growing, right?
Wow.
I mean, the whole community is developed around golf cars. I mean, that's the way it is. I mean, they're one of our bigger dealers in the country is the villages, right? So, I mean, that's what they do. I mean, they cater to those people. I mean, they basically get there and they're on their golf cars. I mean, as long as they're there, almost. I mean, they can do everything. Go everywhere with it. So it's kind of cool. So.
Well, and on the other end of the spectrum, let's talk about the guy that lives out in more of a rural area. Let's say he does live on a farm, or he lives near a farm, or he's a hunter. Having a side-by-side, he might already have one. Maybe he takes it to go hunting, he drags that deer out with it, or he takes his dog box, throws his pointers in there, and he goes out and busts some pheasants. Those guys obviously can take that same side-by-side, go out and do sporting clays with it just fine without having to buy another dedicated piece of equipment, so it totally makes sense. And at the same time, if you do live out in the country and you don't have one already, there's just another reason, like Jason, haul firewood, maybe do yard chores. Maybe you can convince the old lady that it's a good investment.
I tried that with my shotgun. It didn't work.
It didn't work? Okay. All right. I'm just thinking positively.
Yeah,
here,
right. So you said that you started off, EZGO was able to sponsor the Camille Cup, and then you guys eventually moved on, and now you sponsor the NSCA.
Correct.
Have they had any kind of requests as far as like equipment goes with the golf carts at all?
Not really. I mean, they love the Clays car, right? So they use a lot of our utilities at the facility. So not really. I mean, they actually love the way the Clays car fits into that world. And I think a lot of the clubs that use us for their rental vehicles, they have, the Clays cars. And it's been great for us, right? It's great exposure. We have a dealer that actually does all the rentals for the Nationals there in San Antonio, that a lot of those vehicles are just Clays cars. They're just not bright.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think that's Denver.
Deaver.
Yep, Deaver. That's right.
Yep. So, it's good exposure. I mean, that's why we've kind of wanted to be part of the NSCA, just because of that factor. I mean, it's great advertisement, but, we know as a company, EZGO doesn't fit for every lifestyle. We'd love for it to, but we get it. Trust me. Just like he said, I mean, a guy that, and yourself, I mean, if you're using it on a farm, and I think that's the biggest thing. They got to look at what are they going to do with this vehicle other than, have it as a dedicated sporting clay vehicle. I always, my wife and I always talk, we've had campers, right? And we always, when I go to the Grand American for trap, we always say, man, I wish we'd have kept our camper. We could have stayed here. Yeah, we use it twice a year, right? We're staying at the Holiday Inn Express, right, in Sparta.
That's an expensive hotel twice a year.
Exactly. Right? So, and that's kind of the same thing. I mean, and sure, there are guys that will buy a dedicated sporting clay vehicle. Great, love them, regardless of which side they go to. But I think it comes down, are you going to use it other ways? I mean, if you shoot sporting clays 10 weekends a year, sure. What are you going to use it for the other 42 weeks of the year? That kind of thing. Yeah. So, yeah.
Hey, question for you. So, speaking of guys using a rural area, I don't know. Do they make a 4-wheel drive version in the EZGOs? We
don't. I mean, we bounced back and forth. Honestly, we used, because we own Cushman, right? So, we've had Cushman has some 4-wheel drive, but we honestly, when we bought Arctic Cat, we used their vehicles and just rebranded them.
Gotcha.
And it's different with our dealer network, because if you go to an EZGO dealer per se, people think of golf cars, right? They're not thinking of side-by-sides. And when we bought Arctic Cat, we put EZGOs in Arctic Cat dealers. And people didn't really
It didn't
Look,
bond
it
well?
didn't. Because people were going to an AutoCAD dealer to buy a side-by-side. They weren't going to buy a golf cart, right? And it was kind of that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Particular mindset for each product.
exactly right. Right. So, we tried it and didn't really work. And we came back to kind of our dedicated different. That's kind of like we talked about our dedicated sales reps. I was both for a while, and then we went back to kind of two different reps to handle the different dealer groups. Same type of thing. So...
You mentioned the whole camper thing. There's a lot of people that use those, I think they call them fun movers or whatever. They have the ramp door in the back. And
toy haulers.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think fun movers the trailer and toy haulers the camper, or vice versa.
Yeah.
One of them's a motorhome, one of them's a trailer. But anyway, but that's something to consider.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you got like my side-by-side, it won't even fit in an enclosed trailer unless you got a tall body.
Yep.
Because the roof, right? So I guess that'd be one thing to consider. Another thing, too, and Sean, you got right down here in the notes something about a trailer.
Yeah.
You know, our friend Kurt that has a golf cart has got one of those little dinky fold-up trailers you can get from Harbor Freight, and he folds it up and it fits in his garage in town just fine.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mine is not going to, the dry weight on mine is 2,000 pounds.
Right.
So it's not going to fit on one of those trailers, or at least it won't hold it anyway.
And I think you bring up another good point about, you got to look at the tow vehicle that you have, because with a side-by-side, you pretty much need at least a small pickup truck, like a small body, even, I don't know if you can get away with like a minivan or something. Maybe. I don't know. That'd be kind of pushing it possibly.
A minivan? What kind of soccer mom stuff are you?
I'm just talking about the guy. Like he doesn't have a golf cart. He doesn't have a side-by-side. So he's trying to decide, what do I get? Well, obviously, if you got a pickup truck, you can haul anything. Yeah. But if a guy's got, like, say, a minivan or an SUV, a small SUV, you might be kind of pushing it with some of the side-by-sides as big and heavy as they get.
Absolutely.
Especially the crew cab versions, the long ones, and then you got a big trailer to drag that around with. So if you got a smaller vehicle, then, obviously a golf cart seems to be more reasonable to go and tow around town and not kill your car.
So here's one for you. What about the guy that doesn't want to buy anything, wants to go to the club and rent it? So do you guys have like lease programs you do with clubs, or?
We do, yeah. It depends on kind of where they are and everything. But yeah, there's lease programs that we, they have our vehicles. We switch them out, honestly, just like a golf course, right? So, every 3 or 4 years, they're upgrading, right? I do a couple of clubs up in Michigan that are that way. But yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, we switch them out. They kind of pick the different models. We make a 6-seater on the EZGO side, of course, kind of our crew called the L6. Yeah. It's similar, but not similar. But yeah, I mean, that's exactly, just like with Deaver and what they do with renting them at the, at Nationals and at, US Open, depending on where it is and the different events, just same thing. I mean, and it's a good opportunity for the individual to see what he likes as well. You know, if a golf car, like, is this going to meet his needs, essentially?
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Well, that was one of the deciding factors for me to buy at the time when I bought mine, is I told the wife, I said, you look at all these shoots I'm going to, some of these shoots are over $100 a day for a golf cart rental.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And okay, you have the expense of the gas towing it there, but it does not, if you add it up at the end of the year, you're going to pay a lot more in rental than what you did in that little bit of extra gas mileage.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So that was a big deciding factor too, and they're getting expensive.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, everything is increased in price for sure.
Boy, howdy.
Yeah, it's. But yeah, I mean, it just comes down to like personal preference. I mean, and like the camper is the exact same thing. If you use it twice a year, probably renting makes sense, right? I mean, if you're at a club that actually has them, right? There's certain clubs, they may only have 5 old beat up golf cars or whatever they have, and that's it. Or they may have a fleet. You're like, hey, I'm going to this club. They've got rentals. That's like Grinnell Cup, right? I knew every year. I never took my vehicle to Nashville. They always had one. They had rentals there. I knew the dealer that was doing all the rentals, and I would just grab one of their vehicles. It didn't make sense for me to drive it from, Columbus, or you lived in Cincinnati at the time, all the way to Nashville when I could just rent one.
Right.
So.
Well, and Jason and I have even seen a lot of the clubs nowadays, they'll offer a club member, especially if it's your local club that you shoot at all the time, they'll offer a place for you to store your golf cart or your side-by-side. They may have a garage, they may have some storage containers or a shed or something like that is keyed. I mean, we've seen that down in Florida at South Florida Gun Club.
Yep.
They have little Connex boxes, and you can actually lock your buggy up in there and with your ammo and everything else, and go get it when you need it, so you're not trailering it every time you go to the club. So that makes sense too.
Well, that was one of the things that Chad Roberts was talking about out there. I think it's LA Clays. They have, you you got your own golf cart, fine. They've got storage units for it. I mean, but they call it the cart barn or whatever.
Right. Yep.
And there's places for electrics to plug in, and there's
Yeah. I know Tucson has that as well. Yeah. I mean, yep.
Were you going to say something, Sean?
Well, I was just going to ask him. I mean, so if somebody's kind of pondering getting a golf cart or a side by side, either one, any major words of wisdom or mistakes that you see people make when they purchase one, like not thinking through, like maybe not buying big enough, maybe buying too big? I don't know. What do you see out there?
I mean, there's only really a couple of things. I mean, we've talked about electric. I don't think electric makes sense for sporting clays per se, unless it's you're only going to a couple of clubs. It's a very small club. Electric could work for you potentially, but majority, I mean, you're going to look at gas, right? So you're also going to look at what kind of features do you want, right? Do you need a 6-passenger, right? Are your kids, wife, whoever going to go? Is your buddies have them that you always shoot with? Right. Are they going to depend on you? What do you want it to look like, right? Do you want a traditional, like we make them a traditional golf car that's not lower, doesn't have the 14-inch wheels, all that? Do you need something like that literally could fit in the bed of your truck, still gas, right?
Right.
Still can have all the stuff. It's just not as big. Right. So that's kind of something. Do you want that range, or do you want to go to a full clays car, right? Mm-hmm. Does it have all the features that you want? And the same thing with a side-by-side, it'd be that way as well, right? I mean, there's pluses and minuses, but I would say that you need to look at, like you said, what your intended purpose is, where you're going to use this the most, kind of what things do you have to have on the vehicle, and what are wants for that vehicle, right? Like you would love to have all this storage space, but also it's got to fit in the bed of my truck, my long bed, right? You're going to have limitations with that. So that's just something you need to look at. If you're fully fine buying a trailer, clays car all the way, right? I think that makes 100%. It's designed for those shooters.
Right.
So
I read an interesting article this morning. The CEO of KTM North America, I'm a big motocross guy.
Oh, yeah.
And they have since have acquired Husqvarna and Gas. But anyway, they just built a new $53 million facility out there in California, and so that was the reason for the interview. But he was talking about the development in electric dirt bikes and electric bicycles and all that kind of thing. And for the bicycle world, it kind of works because they can pedal when it dies. Dirt bikes, not so much.
Right.
But he was talking about the battery technology, and he said it just hasn't came far enough yet. He seemed to think that it was kind of along the lines of the electric car. If you're doing short commutes, it makes sense. If you can always plug it in, it makes sense. Long term, no. Are you guys kind of running into the same thing with your electric golf cars? The battery technology is just not there yet as far as those kind of batteries go?
We're actually on the opposite side, believe it or not. I mean,
really?
We've actually switched all of our electric vehicles to lithium, right?
Really?
So we have Samsung that does all of our battery packs, all of our battery maintenance systems, and it's been incredible, right? So we were the first one to come out with lithium in our golf side, right? And then we brought it into all of our vehicles. So you can buy a clays car as a S4, what we call Elite, which is lithium. Right?
Okay.
And you can get different battery packs. I mean, you can get up to like a 6.2 pack for us. I mean, you're getting 40 plus miles depending on the terrain on one charge. You can charge that thing up in under probably 5 hours from fully dead.
Wow. Okay.
So it's different, right? Like motorcycles would be different than the golf side of our business and the way like this would be. But yeah, I mean, for us with having Samsung, I mean, that technology is incredible for our business.
So what would you say lithium versus the old cell batteries that you had previously? Yep. What would you say the percentage of increase was with that? I mean, as far as runtime goes.
I mean, it's not so much runtime. If you look at a basic battery pack, which, like I say, it's a 2.2 for us, right? And a 48-volt electric, the range is about the same.
Okay.
But what you're eliminating is the maintenance. There's no watering batteries, all right? You're not having batteries crack in the middle of the winter because the charger died, right? Because you got a battery maintenance system. The warranty, right? You're going from a 2-3 year warranty for our vehicle on a lead acid side to an 8-year warranty.
Oh, wow.
So you're talking big difference. Now you're paying a little bit, you are paying extra for that lithium, but I mean, it's for me, and I'll be honest, I mean, I've always had gas vehicles my entire life, right? My next vehicle is actually going to be a lithium.
Really?
Right? Because it's just, for me and my lifestyle, it's perfect, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just plugging in. I didn't want to be the guy, because we live in Ohio, right? The power goes out. it's cold. You know, like we've had the winter snap this year around Christmas.
Yeah.
And those batteries freeze and bust, right? And I'm calling the company saying, yeah, my demo, I need a new set of batteries.
Right.
You know, I didn't want to be that guy. But I think the range anxiety has always been the limiter to electric, right? And I think you do have that because we make 72 volt vehicles as well. We did, right? In the lead acid. And that helped with that range. But when you're talking even more range, you're doubling that 70. When you go to a 6.2 battery pack, you're doubling that range. Right.
Wow.
So, I mean, there is, and like I said, you're still going to have guys, you know, at nationals, electric's probably not going to work because of plugging in. I don't think it's so much the range. I think it's the plugging in, which now they have, a lot of them have onboard chargers.
Yeah.
So literally you're taking a 110 outlet and just plugging it in. Right. But do you have that everywhere? That's the thing. If you have a cart barn, sure, absolutely. I mean, you get done with it, plug it in at the cart barn, you know, go back to your hotel next morning, unplug it, and you're good to go for the whole day.
Right.
It's just a lot of facilities. Just, you know, you mentioned electric vehicles, right?
Yeah.
Like cars, Tesla, exactly. That's my biggest thing.
That's the limiting factor for all of them.
And also charging them. Do you have enough time to charge them up? Boarding clays is easy, right? You know, we use it all day. We got plenty of time at night to charge it up. You know,
Right.
But yeah, I think with that, with, you know, the motocross, yeah, I think that would be difficult.
Yeah,
right. But
it is.
But on our side, it makes a lot of sense. It's been phenomenal. I mean, we came out with. It's kind of funny when we introduced lithium for the first time. It was actually at the PGA Golf Show, and it was also the exact day that we announced we bought Articat.
Oh, nice.
So they actually were right on top of each other.
Nice.
So yeah, so we've had lithium now for 6 years. We've got, I believe, on the golf side, almost 300,000 vehicles on the golf side that are lithium out there right now since 2017. So
well, I think part of his point too, to be fair, in that article was the amount of power that they're trying to match.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, if you look at a modern day 254 stroke motorcycle that's making over 40 horsepower, in order to accommodate that in battery, you know, it's too heavy.
Correct.
For one.
Yes.
Okay, so then when you get just that borderline on weight, then the battery, it'll produce that amount of power, but your runtime is way shortened.
Yeah.
And that's totally different anyway. I mean, these guys are using handfuls of power every jump, you know, so it's totally different. But it's interesting about the battery technology. One of the things you mentioned was warranty. Mm-hmm. What is the warranty on an EZGO versus, say, an Articat or a Tracker or whatever? Are they comparable?
They are. Like, I know, like an EZGO, it's 2 years. Depending on the Articat, it could be a year, 2 years. It just depends on their models. And we have some that are 3 years on the gas side. We have some that, actually, thinking about it, they're actually all at least 2 years on the EZGO side. Now, when you go to lithium, like I said, you've got an 8-year warranty on that
incredible.
battery pack.
Yeah, that's
and
really cool.
It's amazing. I mean, honestly, people look at that and they're like, wow, you know, even if you look at the cost difference, you know, batteries, depending on how you take care of them, you're going to replace them 2 times in 8 years. Probably. I mean, you don't take it, maybe 3. And the price of lead batteries right now, or it's
expensive.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh,
I mean, and it's one of those things. Like the biggest thing I always get when people talk about, I don't want the stains on my garage floor. Right. I don't, you know, and I always say, well, that's because you filled them up and they, you know, you caused that essentially,
right.
You know?
Yeah.
But he's like, that was, I always get that comment. I was like, well, with lithium, you don't have to worry about it. It's just like your cell phone. You plug it in. I mean, it's great. Yeah.
That's incredible though on that warranty. That's really cool. I mean, it's funny to think about where we've came, you know. I mean, 20 years ago, the cordless drill was a big thing, but then, you know, the batteries didn't make it. Nowadays, they got to rip your arm off.
Oh, yeah.
You know. Of course, everything you use for your yard nowadays, you can get in cordless, and it works good.
It does. Yeah, absolutely.
So, but last thing I have here on my notes, Sean, is financing. Do you guys offer financing to the general public, or is that something that's done outside?
We do through our dealers. So we use like Sheffield, we have Yard Card, Roadrunner. You know, like right now, you know, through April, I mean, we have 0 for 48.
Nice.
You know, 0 for 36. You know, 199. I mean, there's all those different options through the different companies through our, you know, through your local dealer. So yeah.
Sean, you got any?
I mean, we've covered pretty much everything I can think about. I mean, we've talked about the heat and the air conditioning. We've talked about gas versus electric. We've talked about why you want a side-by-side versus a golf cart.
I know something really important we're missing.
What's that?
Joey's a shooter.
Oh yeah, let's talk a little bit about his shooting.
So I'm gonna ask him a question, and I'll let you handle the rapid fire questions.
Okay, sounds good.
Joe, you see our list of sponsors there on the wall over there. You use any of those products from our great sponsors? We got Elite Shotguns,
I know those
USA.
guys. I know those guys very well. Yes, I do.
Bear Pelt vests, of course.
I don't have one of of those.
Oh my gosh!
Well, remember he's a trap shooter. So
I am
they
a trap
They
shooter.
got, hey, they got pouches.
I do.
Now they do.
Yep.
Now
They
do.
got pouches.
Yep.
Of course, Atlas traps.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You love you some Atlas, don't you?
I do.
RE Ranger. What kind of glasses you use?
I use Ranger. Yep.
Do you really?
I have forever.
You use the Edge or do you use the Marshalls?
I use the Edge.
Or
Yep.
the Edge?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Had them for a long,
See,
long
Sean,
time.
you got the. Do you have Falcon?
Mine are the Falcons.
So he's got the Falcons. I have to use the Edge because my prescription is different from side to side.
Oh, okay.
So unfortunately, I'm 2 lenses instead of one big one. Odo Pro Technologies. Do you know about Odo Pro hearing protection?
I don't know. No.
Bluetooth rechargeable.
Wow.
Custom fit ear protection. And then if you don't want to spend the money on that, they have the. I'm gonna get a phone call. The Impulse.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah, it's a filter. It's push in, but it's got a filter in it. So you put these things in. We can sit here and talk just like we are right now, and you can hear me just fine. As soon as the gun goes off, it silences.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for $50.
Wow. Yeah. That's incredible.
So we'll hook you up with that before you leave here. Of course, Rhino chokes.
Absolutely, got them in my sporting clay gun.
There you go.
Absolutely.
What gun do you shoot? Well, I'll let Sean ask those questions. Is it ported?
It is.
Rhino ported.
It's not Rhino ported.
Oh.
No.
That's all right.
The lovely Miss Dawn Grant. There's somebody to get your head right for you if you're out of whack. She's reinvesting in her career with Sean and I. It's a process.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Vero Beach Clay Shooting. You know where those guys are.
Absolutely. Yes.
White Flower. I guarantee you shoot their targets.
I do. Yep. Josh Taylor and Robert Crow, Bill Daniels, good friends of mine. So.
And then of course the lovely Casey Chase from Score Chaser. So. Sean, why don't you start on some rapid fire questions?
All right, we always do a segment here. I know you probably don't listen to the show too much, but we do a rapid fire series. It's just basically what's your gear, what's your gun, what chokes do you shoot. So let's talk on the sporting clay side of thing. What gun do you shoot?
I have a Perazzi.
A Perazzi. What's your barrel length?
30.
Okay, 30. And do you have a custom stock or a factory stock?
I do. I have a Winnick.
Got a Winnick stock.
Yeah.
Okay, nice. And is that the one that's ported?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Okay, so it is ported.
Yep.
And then
you said Rhino chokes, right?
Yep, Rhino chokes. It was actually Briley did the porting. So,
Okay.
Yep.
What constriction do you usually shoot in sporting?
I'm goofy, right? So I think on me, it's usually like a 16, kind of in the bottom barrel, could go to a 10. And then in the top, I'm usually 25, right?
Okay.
So I'm a little probably tighter.
Tighter.
Just because of trap. I hate to say that. So,
No, that's all right.
That's just me.
Totally good. Now, what kind of shells do you like to rock?
I do like Federals.
Okay.
Really?
I do.
What's your recipe?
Honestly, I use the 1000s. I mean, feet per second. So the 1 ounce a lot of times. I mean, that's just me.
That's what works. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, sporting and trap, I usually shoot papers. I hate to say it. I got 1 ounce and 1/8 of 8s and the handicap loaded 7.5s. So
Gotcha.
Likes those papers.
Yeah.
You already said you use Rangers.
I do.
And then ear protection. Do you use anything special?
not really special. Believe it or not, Granny has always made me. Just molded earplugs. I mean, every few years, I just have her make me another set. So.
Okay. And I know you're not a vest shooter, but you shoot with a pouch.
I do.
Right?
Yeah.
Am I missing anything, Jason?
What's in your bag?
Oh yeah, anything you carry in your shooting bag that's odd or weird, like fuzzy troll doll or Lucky Rabbit stuff?
Troll.
No,
Hey, I'm just throwing stuff out there, man. Come on.
I mean, the goofy thing, I'm a diabetic, so I always have some kind of candy or something to that extent, just in case in my bag.
Gotcha.
Always. Yeah, it's
Very
just kind of
cool.
one of those things. So, yeah.
Well, I think that pretty much covers everything.
Yeah, for sure. How often do you get to get out and shoot?
Not very often now.
Really?
I have a 10 and 13-year-old. And
Oh,
So
those
you're,
like busy
you're at
years.
the ball games.
yeah, when they were younger shot, I would say every weekend. I mean, with Calcutta, sporting clays. I mean, we talked earlier, like Rick and I, we roomed at Nationals probably for, 3, 4, 5 years in a row. We always
Really?
had our squad. White Flyer guys always shot with us. Bobby at Winnick shot with us a lot. We had such a great time. But then kids, right?
Yeah.
I always had buddies that say, "Oh, I can't shoot this weekend. My kids are doing X, Y, and Z." I'm like, "Nah, that's a lame excuse."
But when you get there, you're like, "Oh
and
yeah."
I'm looking at we've tried to schedule this a couple times. Oh, my kids have a game. My kids have practice.
Right.
Travel basketball for like the youngest and stuff, and then they both play travel baseball. I mean, it's a games have already started. You know, I've got a 7th grader and he's playing school ball, and then travel ball picks up as soon as it's over. Yeah, the 10-year-old's already had his first game of travel baseball, and it goes through July 4th. So pick a weekend, and then, you know, you tell your wife, hey, I'm going to go shoot the one off weekend we have. Yeah.
That's when so-and-so's birthday party comes up.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's been tough. I mean, I try to make an effort. I mean, you know, I go to Ohio State shoots, and, you know, we go to Sparta. I haven't been to the Nationals in a few years just because of the timing. But, yeah, I mean, hopefully more.
Are you going to try and get the kids into shooting? Or?
I am, yeah. They've shot around. I mean, my father-in-law and my dad, I grew up on a farm, you know. So, I mean, we shoot, you know, occasionally. My wife has shot a few times, right? It's not something – she's very competitive, so it's, you know, it falls right into her wheelhouse as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's cool. So, maybe get them into SCTP, then you'll always be at the range.
Absolutely.
You know? So that's Sean and I. We always try to encourage everybody to take somebody new shooting. You know, that's our big thing we push on every episode. And it's amazing how many people have came up to us and said, "I started shooting tournaments because you guys," or "I got into shooting because you guys." And it's like, wow. I mean, it just all it takes is introduce somebody to this, and they're hooked. You know?
It is true. I mean, even like me, right? So Middletown Sportsman Club, pretty well known club. Just, I don't know, out of the whim, I don't even remember how I even found out about it. Decided to go there, had a 1187 Remington, right?
There you go.
Yeah. And I said, I'm going to shoot something. Had no idea. You know, everything for me was skeet shooting, right? I didn't know what trap was, sporting clays. So I go in, the club manager, great guy, Chuck, said, hey, you can try skeet. I had these great guys, took me out, kind of showed me the ropes. And then another guy at the club said, hey, this is trap. Shot a couple rounds. Trap. Like, man, I really like this too. Next weekend I come out, we went and shot sporting clays for the first time. But they took me around. There was guys that kind of took me under their wing because it's intimidating, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you show up at a club. I mean, there's all these guys, and they got these expensive guns and all this stuff, and you're a newbie. You have no idea, right? I remember the first time I went to a tournament, I had no idea what even to do.
Yeah.
Right. And luckily people were there, kind of put their arm around me, like, hey, let me show you how to do this. Right.
Yeah.
And those guys, I mean, I could see, me looking back, like, what if that hadn't happened? Would I have had kind of a bad experience and never done it again?
Right.
Like, those guys were jerks, right? They didn't want to help me. But instead, I mean, I've done it now, 25 years now.
Yeah.
Well, so, Jason and I say it time and time again. I mean, there's just so many wonderful people in the shooting community. They'll take you under their wing. Yeah. They'll help you get started. They'll help you learn the ropes. And I think that's what builds that kind of brotherhood, sisterhood type of thing with everybody. And everybody's out there competing against each other, but at the same time, they're willing to help you.
Right, absolutely. I mean, we talk about Rick Marshall, right? I'll never forget when I met Rick the first time, 2004, Grand American was in Vandalia. It was the next to last year before it was in Dayton. And came off the line. I don't remember. I think I was shooting handicap, kind of down. And I didn't know who Rick Marshall was. I didn't know he was just all-American, shooter.
The guy,
essentially. Yeah. He just kind of said, he put his arm around and said, hey, man, you're all right. You'll be good. And his squad had followed us. And after we got done, we were talking. And still had no idea who he was, right? No idea. Just giving me some, encouragement and stuff. Went away. Buddy of mine goes, oh, you were talking to Rick Marshall. I was like, yeah, it was a really nice guy. He gave me some tips. And it's like, he's an all-American. He's like, really? He said, yeah. He's like, the man, right?
He's like the Michael Jordan.
Yeah, exactly. So it was just, and that honestly started our friendship. I mean, I had no idea who Rick was, and here this guy is, all-American, Hall of Famer, can shoot all three disciplines, right?
Yeah.
And he took the time to a new shooter and myself, give me some tips.
That's awesome.
It was cool, and we've been best friends since then. It's been great.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Well, when we're done here, we're going to hook you up. We need to get him in contact with Bear Pelt and with, of course, Dr. Grace at Odo Pro. You got to check these things out. I'm telling you, I love them. One last thing, you did mention the gun. You went out there with old Remington 1100. When I show friends and family that don't shoot, they want to see my gun.
Right.
And how much is that color? And oh my gosh, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, look, the national championship, not last year, but the year before, was won with an A400 that you can go buy for $1,500.
Yeah. Right.
Now, I'm sure Joe's was a Cole Pro, and it might have been double that cost, but basically the same base model gun, they can go buy $1,500, and probably the most common gun you see on the course.
Oh, absolutely.
Really.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
because it's an economical way to compete.
Yeah.
So, but Joey, thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything else that you wanted to throw out there before
No,
wrap
I mean,
things up
I've
here?
had a great time. This is a lot of fun. I mean, to get into to talk about this is it's unusual. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, if people want to find out more about EZGO or Arctic Cat, where can they go? Where do they need to look for the local dealer? Go to the website. What's the best thing?
You can go to our website, EZGO.com. You can go to arcticcat.com. I mean, you can type in your zip code. You can find your local dealer for sure.
Okay.
I mean, so yeah, that's the easiest way. Let's put it that way. So,
Cool.
Yeah.
Good deal.
Well, I know Big Rick's coming back into town. I think it's in June for the state trap shoot.
Yeah, one of the big state trap
and
shoot.
he's supposed to come join us in studio, so we'll have to let you know when he's coming. You come up here and harass him with us.
Oh,
so.
I'd love to. Yeah, I think we're going to the NHR race weekend or the race that weekend as well. With our buddy.
Yeah, well, we're supposed to have a special guest from the NHRA
good.
coming in with him. So
Absolutely.
you know who I'm talking
Absolutely,
about.
I do.
So I'm excited about that. But like I said, Joey, thank you very much, man. We appreciate your time. Appreciate you coming up here and sitting with us, and hopefully we got some good information out that people find some value in.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you guys very much.
Yeah, we appreciate you.
We'll see you next time on the Dead Pair Podcast.
The Dead Pair Podcast is brought to you by Elite Shotguns and Vero Beach Clay Shooting and is fueled by Fiocchi USA. The Dead Pair theme song was written, arranged, and produced by Toby Tomplay. Special thanks to the following sponsors: Bear Pelt, Rhino, Oto Pro, Dawn Grant, Atlas Trap Company, RE Ranger, and White Flyer Targets.